Warren was a Thanksgiving baby, born November 28, 1928, to Earl and Pearl Wilcox in upstate New York. Ruth was third of 9 children. Ruth grew up in the little town of Big Tree. It was the 1930s and almost everyone, everywhere, was poor. The Wilcox family was no exception. They lived in a one-room house. Mom calls it a shack. A brother or sister arrived about every 2 years until there were 9. Mom's fondest memories? I love going to church, she says, and learning how to find scripture. She also recalls beaming as her father Earl would proclaim to all, what? I have the most beautiful girls
in the world.
Each was given a nickname. Mom's was
Rufus.
Which means?
The chosen one.
She loved working with her hands. I remember she said how proud I was when I made my first dress and wore it to our 8th grade graduation. She would one day sew dresses for her own girls, Diane and Peggy. Grandma taught my daughter, Ruthie, to love to sew. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Ruthie?
Grandma taught me a lot, and I really miss living with you.
That's going to make Casey feel kind of
Well,
bad.
I'm sorry.
I can't compare to Grandma.
Well, that's true.
I miss being around you guys as often as I was.
In 1946, Ruth met George. Here's how Mom tells it in my voice. Our first date was to Newport Beach with Dorothy, my best friend, and her boyfriend. George was looking for a sweet little Adventist girl, in my opinion, but I wasn't looking for a boyfriend. Actually, I never had a boyfriend, and I was almost 18. We dated, and then we decided to get married. My mom, Pearl, had to sign a certificate giving me permission because I hadn't quite turned 18. They were married in Las Vegas by a justice of the peace over 70 years ago. Now, for the rebuttal, we have George Moore.
I have to stand.
You have to stand.
You can turn on your cell phones now if you want. I was home on leave, and I met Ruth, and we were married quite soon, and it was followed with a few days of a honeymoon. Everything seemed to happen so fast. All of our friends said, it'll never last. One day, while Ruth met a friend and they were having a chat, I walked by and she whispered to Ruth, "You could have done better than that." But 72 years, have been married for 72 years. Some were adventurous, some were happy, some brought tears. And if that girl who said to Ruth that you could have done better, you know, were here tonight, she would whisper so softly in Ruth's ear and said, "See, I was right." But I must agree that Ruth could have married better than me. But you know what? I thank God she did not.
Like, I remember the night David tried to sneak past curfew. What? You want to tell this?
Well, I'd rather tell it than you.
I think he needs to do rebuttal.
Rebuttal time.
I guess it's my turn. Okay, so let me preface this by saying that you rarely get much out of me that is real serious. But I have to tell you that you're the best mom in the world ever. And everybody that knows you knows that. Everybody has so many kind things to say about you, but you were a disciplinarian. Now, Dad, I'll just tell you this, that when I got in trouble, you would say, okay, no car keys for 2 weeks, and the next day your hand would be on my shoulder and say, that's okay. I forgive you. But Mom, and you had a lot of grace, but I will tell you, you would come and put your hand on my shoulder and say, no, it's 2 weeks. But I will tell you this, there was one night, and I'm going to tell the story that Cary asked me to tell.
I was going to tell it if
is-
you didn't. So.
That is, I would go out and I would break my curfew on occasion, but I knew I'd be okay if I snuck, and that was that home on Alaska, and I would sneak around the bedroom and into my bedroom very quietly if I was late. And so one day, I discovered there's a crack in the floor, and it would squeak right in front of their bedroom. So I said, I was real late, and so I said, I'm going to figure this one out. And so, I don't know if you remember this story or not. Yeah. And so I started to disrobe in the foyer so that I could sneak by, and if that crack went, I would say I was just getting out of bed and going to get a drink of water. And so carefully I took my shoes off and my pants and my shirt, and then I heard a squeak. And it was my mother sitting in the corner watching. And she said, that's it for you, 2 weeks. And I would remember, though, that she lived a life of giving and sharing. And Dad, you and Mom would have people over every Sunday. Every Sunday we had lunch with people I had no idea who they were. Because this one gentleman that was there seemed kind of odd to me, and I have to tell you, he had maybe a little smell of liquor on his breath, and you can tell that as a kid. And so I went to Mom and I said, who was that guy that was sitting next to so-and-so? And she said, I don't know, your dad invited him. And go ask your dad. So I went to Dad and I said, Dad, who was the gentleman that was sitting there? He goes, I don't know, your mom invited him.
So I have to echo the grace and the love and all of that. So this is a story that takes place before. This is my future mother-in-law. And I knew before I was married that I was going to have the best mother-in-law in the world. So the picture that you saw of the house where David grew up and the car, the R100 sitting out front. So that house, when we were engaged but not yet married, where I'm over on a Saturday and David's upstairs watching TV, and I'm in the kitchen making some French fries. I'm talking real French fries, like hot oil French fries. And he goes, oh, you gotta see this is so cool on TV. I don't know what it was, but I went up the stairs for a second, and when I came down, there were flames that high on the pan where the French fries were down to a crisp. And so I was panicked, and I grabbed the pan to move it, and as I started to do that, my brain said, this is really hot. And I dropped the pan. Thankfully, it didn't splash all over me, but I burned a hole in the linoleum of my future mother-in-law's house. Because I'd met once in church and had maybe a 10-word conversation with, hi, how are you? Oh, it's nice to meet you. That was the conversation. So she comes back from Taiwan, and I'm, sort of showing her the floor, and she says, oh, don't worry about that. We'll just put a rug over it. And if somebody asks questions, we'll just say we'll give them $200 off the price of the house. She never said a word about it.
But I do want to say one other thing. I'm so proud of my brother for doing this. And last week she had another party. Cary was telling me there were like 60 plus people.
Yes.
And Mom kept saying, I don't want to have this party. I don't want to have this party. But in the back in her office, she had a list of people she was inviting. It's not true. Well, blame Cary, because he's the one that told me. But Cary, you've been such a great brother and even a better son. And I am so proud to be here and be a part of this. And the 70th birthday or the 70th wedding anniversary, Cary did that.
Yeah.
And this he did, and it's amazing. And a lot of people think that people just show up because they're getting free food, but That's not really true, because, but thank you, Cary. I deserve so much.
Little guy by the name of Robert Solano. Some of you guys remember Robert, but he was hilarious. But the first day he started working, Mom came to me and she said, "This little guy you just hired keeps calling me Mom." To which I said, "Well, maybe he needs a mom." And he did. He needed a mom. And the other thing is, you know, working here, a lot of these young kids need a mom. And that's what I think is so great about Mom, is she takes the time and energy and to spend as much time with each and every one of them to give them advice, to loan them money when they need it. But when she does, she makes them sign a contract. And if they don't pay it back, when it's time for the check, make sure you get that money out of there. So she's very fair. And the reason is, because she tells me, she says it's not good for them. It's not good for them. In 1951, Ruth and Moore became the preacher's wife at 56 and L, Church of Christ in Tacoma, Washington. In 1969, Ruth Moore became the missionary's wife when Dad took over the Taiwan work from Dick Adey. In 1975, Mom began her gift shop career with the purchase of the Mall 205 Van Dyne's chocolates. Over the next 20 years, she opened and operated several more stores in the Portland area. And it was during this time in Portland when Mom and Lynn grew very close. And if Lynn wouldn't mind, I'd like you to come up and say a few words.
My Aunt Ruth is a strong and powerful woman before it was ever fashionable to be a strong and powerful woman. Yeah. And I wanted to stay over and go over, spend the night with my Aunt Ruth and Peggy, who I was very close to, and Diane, who I love to be with. David, not, you know, I don't know, but Cary and I, we play Monopoly, and he always cheated. Yeah. No, he always won is when the problem. So I wanted to spend the night and go to church the next day, but you had to wear a dress to go to church when you were a little girl. You could not wear, you know, pants. And so my Aunt Ruth said, "That's okay, I'll just sew you a dress." And that night, she just literally took out her sewing machine and she sewed me a dress so that I could spend the night and go to church the next morning and stay overnight. And you know, what's so powerful about that is not only that you had every skill in the world that any person, you have more skill than anybody is entitled to have. But what it did for me in my heart was that you cared about me enough to want me to spend the night, enough to get out your sewing machine and literally sew me a dress. It didn't have any sleeves. I remember it was sleeveless. I remember everything about that, and I love you so much. You're really my grandma, because I didn't really have other grandmas that were around, and so I really love and appreciate you. I learned so much from you. Every quality that I think I have, anything that's industrious, anything that's strong-willed, I feel like it comes right from you. I love you.
Nice.
Well, there was a dress she sewed for Peggy, and Peggy put it on, and she went to school, and she came home, and she was hurry home, and she was really agitated, and Mom said, "What's wrong?" And what did Peggy say?
She said, "Mom, you know what you did? You made this outfit so I couldn't take it down and go to the bathroom."
So I'm cooking back in the kitchen. There's a guy on the other side of the window, and he's screaming at me at the top of my lungs. He said, and he screams at me and he says, "You need to fire that lady up at the register right now." And so I stopped, and we were slammed, but I stopped and gathered my thoughts, and I thought, and this is true, I said, well, there's two problems with that. The first one, is she's my boss. And the second one is she's my mother. And I never seen somebody go from so mad to like deflated. Oh yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah.
Ruth was an example of consistent, constant love of the Lord, love of family, love of the husband, in the church and the community. And so with those things before me, I'm very happy to say that now she is the best sister-in-law I could ever have.
Nice.
And everything you've heard about Ruth is true. My brother, she's just an honest, good person through and through. My brother Donald used to say, if you ever want to know the truth, ask Ruth, because if she had a whole mouthful of lies, she'd never be able to spit them out.
Happy birthday.